So, if you're a PhD candidate, you know the proposal can feel like this massive, daunting mountain you have to climb first. But what if we reframed that? What if we thought of it not as some scary hurdle, but as the actual architectural blueprint for what could be an incredible, world changing research journey? It's the plan, the map, that turns a spark of an idea into a really great dissertation.
Okay, let's just dive right in. We're going to break down the structure of a really powerful PhD proposal, piece by piece. We'll start with the big picture and then zoom all the way into the little details that make it sing. This is our game plan for today. And here it is. This is our master plan, the source for our deep dive today. Now, I want you to think of this as a complete ecosystem. See how each part flows logically into the next? It all connects to create this solid, really defensible structure for your entire PhD. It's basically your visual guide to building this thing from the ground up, successfully. All right, let's start with that big picture 30,000-foot view. Seriously, viewing your proposal as a blueprint is the absolute key. It's not just some document you hand in to check a box. No, it's a thinking tool. It forces you to be clear, to be precise, and to think ahead, making sure every single part of your research has a real purpose.
Okay, I know that sounds really intimidating, right? But it's not about the pressure, it's about the potential. This document is your first and honestly, your best chance to convince your supervisors and maybe even yourself that your research isn't just doable, but that it's actually essential. This is where you make the case for why your work deserves to exist.
So let's get to the first phase of construction, laying the foundation, your introduction and your literature review. These are the concrete and steel that your entire project is going to stand on. If you get these right, the rest of the structure is going to be so much stronger. Your introduction has one main job: to grab the reader and convince them that there is a compelling, interesting problem here that desperately needs solving. You're not just describing a topic, you're pointing to a tension, a puzzle, an issue. You have to set the context, you have to argue for why it matters, and then you have to draw a clear line in the sand that defines the scope of your study. This is your hook. Now, this is so crucial. A literature review is not a book report. It's more like an intellectual battleground. Okay, let's make this really concrete. Let's say your big topic is renewable energy. For step one, you critique existing studies and find, hey, most of the research is about economic incentives for solar panels. Then step two, you do your gap analysis and you realize, wait a minute, almost nobody is looking at the sociological factors like community trust in rural areas. Boom, that's your gap. And finally, for step three, you bring in a theoretical framework, maybe something like theories of social capital, to give you a lens to understand that gap. You've just built a rock-solid argument for why your new research is absolutely necessary. This right here, this is the pivot point for the whole proposal. Finding a gap is one thing, that's great, but it's kind of passive. The next step is to actively say, and here's how I'm going to fill it. This is the moment you stop being just a critic of what's already been done, and you become a creator of new knowledge. And that transition leads us directly to the absolute heart of your project: your research questions and your hypotheses. Believe me, these are not afterthoughts. These are the finely tuned instruments that are going to guide every single decision you make from here on out. You know, these three things work together in a really powerful way. A specific question takes you from trying to study the ocean to focusing on this single drop of water. Let's stick with our solar panel example. Instead of a vague question like, why don't people use solar panels? You get specific. How do different levels of community trust affect the adoption rate of solar co-ops in rural towns? See? That question naturally leads to testable statements and gives you clear objectives, like interviewing community leaders or surveying residents. It creates a project that's actually manageable and meaningful. Okay, so we've got the why and the what locked down. Now we pivot to the how. The methodology section is your practical, no-nonsense, how-to guide. This is where you prove to your committee that you don't just have a brilliant idea, you have a concrete, workable plan to actually answer your questions. All right, first big decision, your research design. Are you going deep, exploring a phenomenon through rich interviews and observations? Well, that's qualitative. Or are you testing a hypothesis with a bunch of data, looking for patterns and cause and effect with statistics? That's quantitative. You might even do a mix of both. And here's the key: your research question makes this choice for you, not the other way around. You see, this whole thing follows a really clear chain of logic. Your research design, say, qualitative. then dictates your data collection methods. Maybe in-depth interviews are perfect for that community trust question. And that choice then determines how you'll analyze the data. You might do a thematic analysis of all those interview transcripts. You have to spell out every step. It proves your plan is rigorous and you've really thought it through.
Look, a great idea without a plan is just a dream, right? This section is all about proving your project is actually feasible. You need a realistic schedule, clear milestones so you can track your progress, a plan for getting ethical approvals if you're working with people, and a smart strategy for managing all your data. This shows you're a pro who's thinking ahead. We're getting close to the end of the blueprint. You've laid the foundation, you've built the structure, you've detailed the whole process. Now comes the final and maybe most important step, explaining why any of this matters. This is the so what section.
This is where you sell the vision. What's the big payoff here? So for our example, the new knowledge isn't really about solar panels. It's about how social bonds affect technological change. The innovation could be a whole new model for community-led green projects. And the implications? Well, your work could actually inform public policy and help create way more effective green energy programs. This is your chance to really spell out the legacy of your research. And finally, every great blueprint needs its supporting documents. Your references list, that's completely non-negotiable. It proves you've done your homework and it connects your work to the bigger academic conversation. And the appendices, while optional, are super useful. That's where you can put things like survey questions or interview guides that just add that extra layer of depth and transparency to your plan. So let's just pull this all together. A really well-structured proposal, it's more than just a document. It's a logical argument. It's a management plan. But most of all, it's a promise. It's a promise to your supervisors, to your field, and to yourself that you have a clear, compelling, and actually achievable vision for creating new knowledge. It really is the blueprint for the contribution you want to make to the world. It's the foundation of your entire academic legacy. So as you sit down to write this thing, don't just think about checking boxes and filling in sections. Think about the promise you are making. What new thing, what new understanding will you bring to the world?